Hey, everybody, welcome back to the show. Super excited to have a longtime friend, client, man of faith, Keith Callaway, who's the CEO and co-founder of K&L Industries. Welcome to the show, Keith. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
No,
Yeah.
that's awesome. Well, cool. Maybe let's start with just kind of your origin story, just personally, professionally, growing the business. You mentioned before we hopped on, that you have 7 kids and kind of the all the exciting things that go on with that business and personal. So maybe just kind of a little bit about the background of who you are, and
Yeah.
we can take her from there.
Okay. Well, who am I? You mentioned faith. I mean, the priorities are God slash faith. My wife, like I, 41 years married.
Oh, God bless you. That's
You know,
amazing.
we can't we can't do anything without the other, right? It's
Uh-huh.
just at this point we're the same. We're part of the same thing. And 7 kids, 6 of the 7 are in business, either with me or various other businesses. Not all of them construction, but most of them are in construction. I wished a little bit better for them, but I don't even know what better is, and I
Yeah.
actually can help them when they have problems, right? So where I'm headed now is basically scaling the business, moving, the I'm trying to pull back and get above it all, see things better, both from a culture standpoint and even a systems and process standpoint, although I'm not super good at that, but there are people that are.
Uh-huh.
So ask a lot of questions of people. Well, how do we do this better? How can we, here's a problem we had. How can we do that better? So that's what I'm doing now. And then I hope someday retirement is not actually a term that I resonate with at all.
Sure.
I you go back to that faith issue. It's not actually a biblical standard. It
Uh-huh.
doesn't exist there. And so I have seen many people in my sphere of influence, my friend group, that have done these things, and I'm like, that looks terrible, to just kind of shut most of the important things in life off, the things that made you who you are,
Right.
where you are uh, where you are explaining to the world who you are by work, by doing the function with your hands and your mind and your heart. And so that probably won't be happening. Although you never know how things go in this business. Never thought about selling K&L or any
Uh-huh.
of these ideas until the last few years, where now businesses like ours are now out there being offered things. I just talked to
Right.
a competitor, a guy, we're friendly. I just saw him at an auction and he said, "Yeah, I'm getting a few offers on my business." And I said, "Yeah, so are we." And so it's this thought now, how does the transition out of full time, 40, 50, 60 hours on some weeks,
Yeah.
how does that look? Do we actually just get some dollars out of it and pass it to someone else, or do we run it from a more of a distance, which seems really hard so far for me to figure out,
Yeah.
but we're at that stage now of trying to wonder what that is. As you know, Keith Jr.'s in this business with me,
Yeah.
and my wife, and so Keith Jr.'s just over 40. And so it's like, well, what do we do for him? Like, what does his dreams, look like in the next 20 years?
For sure.
Well, I'm still not sure where that goes, but it dovetails somehow with what I'm doing, right?
Yeah.
So we're tied into this. Back to the business. I started this thing. I quit my job 2 months after I got married. It's like minimum wage, terrible paycheck. Didn't love it, and I quit my job and thought, I can do construction. I could do things. Got some really funny stories in that first few months,
Uh-huh.
but I just went out and literally started knocking on doors. And most of the first 20 years, which the business has been 41, over 41 years, around 41 years also.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So for the first 20 to 25 years, knocking on doors and what we call in the world now cold calling,
Uh-huh.
was part of what I did almost every day. Literally knocking on doors, walking into businesses and saying, "Hey, you got a problem out here and I'm here to fix it," whatever. And And then I went early those I went through all kinds of recessions too. Like there was bad economics back in the 80s and early 90s. And so I went through a lot of those issues and had to actually travel away from the metro area I'm in because the supply and demand was more in my favor if I went far away. You know,
Okay.
go out somewhere into small little towns and say, I've got this offering. Now they were tight on money just like everybody else, but they never saw somebody that could provide what I provide.
Okay. Sure.
So I did a lot of that over the years, all over Oregon and Washington, a little bit in Arizona, went to Alaska for a couple of summers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and but I started the business to raise my kids, to pay the bills.
Hmm.
And then long story short, the recession of '08 hit. I remember sitting watching the news November 10th of 2008. I saw it, it's going around the country, you know, and then all of a sudden, two of the biggest developers in our area filed bankruptcy the day before.
Oh, wow.
And it hit the news. Now, I didn't work for either one of those developers, but even as dumb as I was back then, I went, uh-oh, that the trickle down effect of that, like this was one was 1,000 houses. These were residential houses. The one built 1,000 a year and the other built 500 a year, and they filed bankruptcy.
Okay.
So these are big players in the market, and it changed our lives and ended up losing equipment, I mean, basically on part of our organization filing bankruptcy. A lot of people did back then. That's a whole different story has a
Uh-huh.
lot of emotion, a lot of frustration,
Sure.
of course, but it was a reset. And so and then not long after that, we're just coming out of that, and then a huge family crisis started happening, and it lingered for about 2.5 years. And then pretty much all of a sudden, the main issue was just done.
Okay.
And from that point on, which has been almost 9 years, we went from this little business that was barely surviving, paying the bills for the kids, uh, and actually during that family crisis, even harder to survive because I am just at wit's end because my family's falling apart,
I'm
you know.
sure. Yeah.
And then so from that year where that all was going, and then it just kind of stopped. The problem went away. Um, from then till now, we've multiplied the business. Well, God has multiplied the
Huh.
business. I think it's 26 times as we project towards the end of this year.
Huh.
And I'll tell you, I wouldn't recommend it.
Huh.
It's slower, more methodical growth. But when you 2x, 3x, 4x something, you're always in uncharted territory the
Sure.
entire way through, right? And thank goodness we have a good network of people we can call now.
Uh-huh.
But back then, even 7, 8, 9 years ago, we didn't have anybody. It's like, and so we're gonna have to learn this on our own. But you don't when you're I'm not much of a surfer, but if you're a surfer,
Huh.
you don't jump out of a good wave, right? You
Right.
ride.
Right.
That's not what you do. You ride the wave and you try to do something in it, even if you might basically get destroyed in the process.
Uh-huh.
And so that's what business has been. We're looking at we went from 9 years ago, 4 employees, my wife and I and Keith Jr., to now we're 60
Huh.
plus. We have people telling me at least once a week, I see your trucks everywhere. Well, we have about 50 around right around 50 wrap trucks out in the metro area doing different things, all the way from dump trucks to sales vehicles. And it's gratifying, but it's just craziness, to go that fast. It's not as if we haven't tried to strategize and pull it back in at times and say, well, and we've decided not to actually start some new divisions
Okay.
over the last couple of years. And said, no, we need to do this thing because there's money to capture here. There's a good opportunity, and we've decided, nope, we're waiting. Like we can't take the profit margins from this that we know how to do
Yeah.
over to this thing that we're not as good at yet. And so we've waited on some things, and we're still fiddling with it, trying to figure out if we can or should. But so that's a story, probably longer than you wanted, but the last 9 years have just been absolutely
Huh.
crazy. Like this teeter totter, we can produce. Look, we have some sales, right? So we can go produce, and some things fell into place back then between Keith Jr. and I. He ended up out in the field. Well, he could produce at a higher rate than I could.
Okay.
So it's like, oh yeah, we can produce now. Okay, well, let's get me selling and let's get someone else selling too, a salesperson, right? And then it's like, well, wait a minute. If we and then let's charge more,
Uh-huh.
and see what that does, right? And all of those things kind of started coming together. And then we were able to buy more equipment, better equipment, hire a few extra people that would, that could help us actually. And that means we could produce even more. That means we hired more salespeople. So it's like this teeter totter
Yeah.
that has sides to it. Now the finance department is pulling their hair out trying to keep up all the time. And actually, we actually have a finance department. So, and that's not just now. That's as we build, it's like, okay, we got to have people for this too.
Sure.
You know, so it's a grand story, but my goodness, there's so many things, and we're still growing. Like we're still figuring out new things in
Uh-huh.
our market, in the things that we're good at, and still always in uncharted territory on a lot of things.
Yeah. It's the world of entrepreneurship, right?
Yeah, it is. That is.
Maybe for the listeners, just share like what is K&L Industries? What actually is the business?
Okay. K&L Industries, it started out 40 years ago, 41 years ago as Keith and Les Swanson he's still a good friend to this day. We worked really hard that first year. We started the company together, K&L, and figured out that it wasn't going to support two families, not in the short term. So he went back to another industry with the idea that maybe he'd come back next year, right? But he very quickly saw that actually I do really well over here. I'm going to stay here, and then I just continued to build the business. My wife's name is Lillian, so we kept the name K&L.
Perfect.
And yeah, so I didn't have to change any of that. And again, I started it originally just to feed the family, to pay the bills. And now it's become a business that actually does more than that. And a couple of years ago, we sat down with some help, somebody consulting us, and said, they were like, okay, what's the business about? Kind of like your question. Well, yes, it's about feeding our family. Of course it is. But and making money. We're not a nonprofit, right?
Uh-huh.
But what do we do? What's in the core of our being? And we came up with transforming lives one shovel at a time.
Huh.
That's our
Love
motto.
that.
It's attached to our logo. And my wife always says, well, don't we all have stuff to shovel out of our life? I mean, don't or shovel back in. You got to fill those. As people improve, they got to fill those gaps with something, or they're not going to stay better.
Yes.
And so that's what we in theory live for. And I say in theory because there are days when you walk in the office and there's a dark cloud over it, and it's all business,
Uh-huh.
right? We have this problem, or we're headed this way, and we got to figure this out. And you know, the crises don't last as long as you think they will. They feel like the world's falling, caving in. But overall, it's about the people,
Yeah. Oh, that's
and
amazing.
seeing if we can get them to the next level in their life. I like being able to have conversations with people about faith. I don't hide my faith from them, and I like having those conversations if they're willing. But mainly, we want to see them get rid of their bad habits and
Uh-huh.
make better habits. We're a second chance employer. We don't shy away from hiring anybody that comes out of treatment or out of prison
Okay.
or jail. We don't shy away from that, and we know what we're getting into with those folks, right? We know that every Thursday at 1 or every other Thursday at 1, they're going to have to go to a PO appointment or
Uh-huh.
whatever it is, right? And what we found out real close to us, and family is that without that kind of support, the system is not set up for success
Okay.
out there. Like if they have to have a full-time job, how do they go to an appointment at 1 o'clock on Thursday?
Right. Right.
How do they do that? And most companies, bosses are just not gonna, no, that's, we're not interested in that. And
Uh-huh.
and yet we work hard at figuring it out because the people moving forward and becoming something that, like, we got some great stories in our company.
I bet you do.
People that have come a long, long ways. They have further to go. We all do,
Yeah.
but come a long ways. They get their kids back. They move from this shanty little, where they're bed, couch hopping, to have an apartment of their own, and now they're moving to this place. Or, I have this ideas 2 years from now, maybe I can buy a house, and they think these progressive thoughts because they've got security in their life, this rhythm, and we've been able to provide a portion of that rhythm for them.
That's incredible.
Yeah, so we love that part.
That's incredible. And you're changing mindsets and what's possible.
Yeah,
It's wonderful.
possibility thinking. I love talking about
Yeah.
that. Like, just, well, what is possible? If you could ask for anything in 5 years, what would you ask for? If you started asking for it today, and then you get an idea what they're thinking, and do yearly goal setting with almost everybody, and just see, well, what would it look like if your life was to move up this year?
Uh-huh.
What would it look like? What would you shoot for? And so those conversations are super fun, and then the outcomes are even more fun to watch.
For sure. How about how, I mean, from the beginning, how has your leadership philosophy changed over the years as you've just had more years in business and you've grown the business?
Well, I was just remembering this the other day because I've felt much the same way in the business a few times recently. My brother worked with me a number of years ago in K&L, and actually he worked with me some and worked for me at other times. It's just one of those strange relationships that kept moving into different forms, right?
Okay.
And one day I was getting all businessy, and it was fairly common for me to know we have to do it this way, and we have to finish by this time, and if we don't finish in this time frame, we're not making any money and all this. And he just looked at me one day and he said, nothing's good enough for you.
Huh.
you know and I don't remember what was said after that. Maybe he followed it with, we're all trying really hard, or we're putting the effort in, and all you're doing is criticizing. I don't remember what followed that, but I remember that statement as clear as if it was said to me today. And and that's what I thought it meant back then to drive business.
Uh-huh.
But it's become a lot more collaborative. When somebody mandates something from the top, whether it's in my department or another, it just makes me nervous now, because I know it's not the right way to do it. Like,
Uh-huh.
I'm not going to go in my company with 60 people and go into another department and say, you got to run it this way, because that person has to go learn for themselves,
Right.
right? But
Totally.
and they have to learn how to lead the way they learn how to lead, and they got to take some of the hits in the process of learning that. But for me, I lead a sales team, and I'm always telling them, listen, I'm not a big control freak. I tell them, that about me. But if you're having problems managing your schedule, maybe we need to sit down and just pull it together and put it on paper, right?
Uh-huh.
I give them the last one more opportunity. No, manage your schedule. Like, you have to do some cold calling, you have to do some follow-ups, you have to do salesy stuff,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, but years ago I might have said, nope, Tuesdays you're in the office, Thursdays you're out cold calling. But anymore, I understood that people have a different rhythm. And actually, I go kind of too far with that sometimes, because
Uh-huh.
I'm kind of a gentle and kind person. I want
Sure.
them to figure it out, own the thing, and then figure it out. But that's also leadership, is that I would challenge any listener with, is that you have to know yourself before you can know how to lead people, how to lead. Each person's going to actually probably need something a little bit different. there's a broad leadership, yes.
Hmm.
But if you're standing up there and you're out of your zone, so to speak, then it's not going to over long time. It's not going to over long term. It's not going to go well. You have to
Yeah.
know yourself and know what you're good at and what you lean towards, and talk about it, and not be embarrassed about it.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And then lead with that constraint that okay, I'm going to be constrained because I see things, I feel things this way. Well, you got to lead within that style, but that doesn't mean that at times you don't need to be bold,
Hmm.
and confront real issues and do hard stuff. But that doesn't mean you go in like a bull and knock stuff over,
Right. Right.
and hurt people in the process. That's not the way this should be done.
Yeah.
Especially if it's not natural for you, because it's gonna get real messy and you're not gonna know what happened.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's totally true.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah. I
stay
mean, yeah.
stay within what you're built to be as much as possible. Now, of course, we got to grow out of that a little bit. Of course we do, but yeah, you got to know yourself.
No,
Got to
that's
learn.
for sure. How about any other leadership lessons that you've learned that have proven particularly valuable to you?
Yeah, there's a lot, of course. I could go a long time probably, but the one main one that's come to me in the last couple of days, I said that, my leadership style is often observation, and then look at the numbers. If there's a number that I can apply to what I'm looking at, apply the number, and then have that conversation, but have it as me,
Hmm.
not as the sales director, not as the owner of the business, but have it as me. Um, but one of the things we did while we were trying to figure out that whole motto thing I was talking about, the transforming lives, is to figure out our core values. What things
Yes.
are important to us to operate on as what are we going to be? Okay. What are we going to be day to day? And I was just thinking yesterday through a problem that we have in the company. And I went, okay, there's this thing that's popped up a few times publicly, and I need to say something. And the reason I need to say it is because it doesn't match four of the five core values
Okay.
that we operate on. It could potentially match one of the five,
Okay.
potential, but it doesn't match at least the definition we've applied to the core value. And no, I just have to say something because it's not where we need to head as a company. It does not where we need to head as people, and it doesn't match our motto, which is
Hmm.
transforming lives.
Yeah.
It actually this thing that's going on actually alienates people, and we can't go down this road. So
Yeah.
now I'm going to say something. Now I got to look for the opportunity to go be me.
Uh-huh.
I could go in and say, this will stop. And maybe in this case, because it matches only, four and a half core of the, only half of one of the core values,
Yeah.
perhaps it is that. And so now I'm wrestling with, well, how do I do that? How do I lead in that idea?
Hmm. So what are your core values? And that was a great example. And then how do you use them in the business?
Can do positive attitude,
Very good.
personal and situational awareness, purposeful, and let's see, truthful and transparent,
Yes.
and values relationships.
Very good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's been some verbiage that's gone out, and I'm like, that no, that doesn't that's off-putting, and that's not, we can't do that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we can't let
Yeah.
the culture, based on the actions that are going on, they can't let the culture slide.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's already issues that come up they sneak up from the side that you don't even see, but when you see
Right.
them, it's time to do something about them.
Yeah. And that's why those core values are so helpful to make decisions. If you're really committed to them,
Yeah,
hiring, firing, promoting, running the
yeah,
business. And then when those things sneak up on you, you can, as you said, step back and observe. And then, okay, how do we interpret this through the lens of our core values? and your team knows that, and then you can communicate them, to them through your core values, and everyone's in alignment and they know what you're talking about, and
Yeah.
makes things, it's not always easy, but it's clear and simple.
It is, it simplifies something that is fairly complex,
Hmm.
which is human relationship.
Right.
You know, just one to one is complex enough, but then you add in 1 to 3, 1 to 10, 1 to 60.
Uh-huh.
It's far more complicated then, and we need something to kind of keep us on our true north. What now we may never get to that true north because in this on this earth you go to true north and the compass does this, right?
Right.
So actually is it? But the idea is to be heading towards it and then dragging, leading, the rest of the team with you sometimes.
Yeah. So maybe talk a little bit about just the culture. What is the culture that you're trying to foster, and maybe kind of how that's evolved over time?
Well, I said earlier that the possibility thinking is what I love talking about the most.
Yes.
And that's that's what I lean towards. And I am looking to replace my position as sales director
Uh-huh.
because because I and then I do something else that is which is happens when you're an owner. So I resonate with all the business owners out there. Yeah, you might have a position that's got a title that, yeah, the title could be replaced, but there's some things in the business that doesn't fit anywhere.
Right.
Doesn't
Right.
fit in one of the verticals, the sales, production, or finance. It doesn't fit in one of those. It's just something that somebody has to do and has to keep their eyes on, otherwise it'll whirl out of control.
Uh-huh.
And I do one of those things, and that's probably a 10 or 15 hour a week thing. I probably will
Okay.
keep that one for a little while. But my full-time job, which is 30 plus hours a week, is the sales director job. Or I think we've chosen somebody. If he accepts, then in the next month or so, we'll onboard somebody to begin the process of replacing me. And the reason I want it so bad is because I can't, I see the I see the culture and I feel the culture and I see some of the issues, but I literally don't have the bandwidth
Yeah.
to go out to job sites and visit my people. And I see a thing in a meeting, but I can't, I have no time in my schedule to run out there and just pull them aside and have a quick conversation.
Uh-huh.
And those conversations to me are like gold.
For
I can
sure.
offer, they're gold to me, but I can offer a big bag of it back sometimes.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm looking forward to in the near future. And that's the way I lead. Obviously the production side of things, Keith Jr. runs that, and it's more run on SOPs and systems and
Uh-huh.
processes, and and that's okay. Let's lean heavily on those. But before you and I got on the actual recording, I was like, man, things have been crazy.
Yeah.
They just been crazy. The last um this time frame, September and early October, the last 3 years, you basically find out if your systems and processes are actually any good. And we once again are finding out that, yeah, we revised a bunch of things and they're just not good enough.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And hopefully we don't have to add a bunch of steps. We just need to add more accountability or
Okay.
whatever to following these certain things. So,
Yeah.
so
What is it about this time of year that like uncovers those processes and procedures and the weaknesses?
well, like most of the country, uh, we have this idea that the rain's coming, the winter's coming,
Okay.
it's the
Yes.
transition of the seasons, which means that people start thinking in August, oh man, I wanted to get this project done,
Yeah,
right? Procrastination is a big one, and then time frames on bigger jobs because they all have schedules and time frames,
for sure.
and most of them hit. The tension of them hits, the pressure of them hit in September. September is the month to get pummeled by customers.
Okay.
I need it. You said, and and we were out 5, 5, 6 weeks in and even more in some cases. And customers are like, you said such and so. It's like,
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, we went long on a job, so
Yeah.
and and so that's the time of year. It's seasonal.
Okay.
It's literally has to do with the season.
Yeah.
And
That
so
makes
we had been
makes a lot.
cranking really hard, working really hard, and it's supposed to rain today. We got up this morning, it's no rain, no rain. And but it's they said yesterday it's going to rain at 10 a.m. Well, we'll see if it does. It would be a shame to have wasted this day for
Right.
some crews. Like, no, we still the paving crew still works on what they call rainy days
Uh-huh.
because most of the time it doesn't rain very much.
Yeah.
But there's certain things we do that are very weather sensitive, and no, we have to not take any risk. So we just leave those people at home, and that's frustrating
Yeah.
this time of year when there's pressure.
I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah, sitting here in Minnesota, I can relate to the turn of the seasons.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
looming winter. Yes.
Yeah. So less in your line of work, but all the construction guys around you are
Oh,
going nuts
yeah.
right now. They're working longer hours. The days are shorter, but they're working longer hours than they have the rest of the year. And it's not because they were planned poorly
Right.
necessarily. Like, yeah, you should have worked 12-hour days in June. Well, we're telling our customers, yeah, you should have signed the contract in June.
Uh-huh. Right. 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 This is
We
what we
easily
told
could have
you.
gotten this done. Yeah, that's what we
Yeah.
actually told you. You got the bid on June 3rd. Why didn't you sign the contract? We have
Uh-huh.
one right now that the customer was super mad. It's a big commercial property, and we're not going to finish every part
Uh-huh.
of it. We're just
Yeah.
not. We're going to
Yeah.
run out of weather.
Yeah.
And he's finally come to terms with the fact that, yeah, that's some of this is on us. So
Uh-huh.
didn't get us a contract until like August 28th and wanted it done by September, the end of September. And
Okay.
it just wasn't going to happen. But
Yeah.
so
How about any like future trends or opportunities that you're most excited about? And then maybe if so, like how you're positioning K&L for those?
um, I would say that the things that K&L is leaning towards, we're very adept at milling and paving, right?
Mhm.
And the high production. We're the only contractor, not the only. There's others that we could, but we don't compete with them much, which is odd. That have all the mills and everything it takes to do a project from A to Z, except for concrete curbs and that kind of thing. But one of the trends we're digging deep into is finding our niche in the public works arena, and we're getting closer to
Uh-huh.
figuring it out. We've done obviously some small projects in the public works, and those are good. We were able to produce them. They were right in our zone. But there's some bigger ones that we've done, and it's like, okay, that one took the heart out of the company for a period of time. We have to
Okay.
watch, we have to watch that, right? Because it
Yeah,
stopped everything else. It became the only focus, and that's really hurtful to the company as a whole.
for sure.
So we have to figure out if we're going to do that, how do we keep the other things operating too, and not overwhelm the finance department and all the things that it takes to to manage all this. And it even actually it's weird because it even from a culture standpoint, it even hurt our sales in the third quarter because our salespeople are like, well, if I sell it now, I'm not getting it done anyway.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh man, that's so frustrating.
Yeah.
That they're out there and they don't see that they're thinking that way.
Right. Right. Right.
I sell this today and they're in a hurry up and I can capture these dollars and maybe even at a higher price, then but it's not possible to do it because we have this big albatross we're working on. It's really almost unfair to have not thought through this ahead of time, and in this case we didn't think through it very clearly.
Uh-huh.
So the trend for K&L public works, and then how do we get into more of the I just drove through uh, a big retail complex, had a Wendy's and Taco Bell and a big supermarket and other things. And I just drove through there and a whole bunch of it had been done. And I'm like, how did we miss this one?
Huh.
You know? And so, yes, we're not going to get every job. And I completely understand that.
Yep.
We're lucky if we get 25% of what we bid.
Uh-huh.
But how do we miss that one? Why didn't they call us is my question.
Uh-huh.
They should have been on our website getting a bid from us also, because this job is perfect for us. And not that the other contractor did a bad job. That's not
Right.
it.
Yeah.
We want all of those opportunities.
Right.
And so that's what I'm leaning towards now. It's partly marketing, but it's partly promotion.
Mm.
So now that we have, 6 people, 7 people within our sales department, eight including me, I'm looking at it now like, what is it? Should we, at the size company we are, should we consider a business, a promotion uh, person? Like maybe we need someone in to help us dig into how to get in the door with that kind of project
Sure.
deeper than I've been able to do,
Uh-huh.
right? Because obviously we're missing some good ones.
Yeah.
So, and we're watching for opportunities there. One of my salesmen is bringing an opportunity to me that it's something online, but it costs, right? I'm like, okay, well, those can suck a lot of money and a lot of
Uh-huh.
time,
Uh-huh.
produce much fruit. So let's look at this one and see if it might. So that's some of the things that I'm looking at, business development, and should we, do we? Because business development is a private sector thing,
Uh-huh.
and we want more of that. The
Right.
jobs are usually less complicated. Now the contracts are a pain in the butt, but the jobs are usually less complicated. You don't have to go out and to worry about every detail. You work with a management company to get it all
Uh,
lined up.
yeah.
So that's what we're looking at is, yes, do we have opportunities out in front of us? Yes, because we're not seeing some of the opportunities. And yeah, we're very visible out in the marketplace. So
Uh-huh.
why do we not get an opportunity on this one? So, well,
Yeah.
we have to be more visible somehow.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, have you thought of, I'm sure you have, like asking them, like, we were just curious. They did a good job. We just noticed you just did this, but like, why didn't you reach out to us and just see what they say? That might be a unlocking
If
insight for you.
Yes, well, if that mall had a management office you could walk
Okay.
into, you could go ask the
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
But the problem is that someone made that decision somewhere, obviously off-site.
Yeah.
And is it a big management company that's a national one, maybe?
Okay.
Is it CBRE or is it one of these others? Like, I
Yeah.
actually don't know yet. And I'm like, okay, let me think about not only how to figure that out, but how do we figure out how to get in the same room with these people when they do networking events, or when
Uh-huh.
they they have when they're looking for contractors, how do they do it?
Yeah.
And yes, they as in that one, but in general, how do they do it?
Yeah.
They Most of them aren't getting online anymore. They're finding other ways to find
Right.
people who want it by referral. Well, then we need to know people that know people. And how do
Uh-huh.
we do that? These are the questions I'm thinking of now.
Yeah.
And with having already my 40, 50 hours a week taken, how do I do these variety of networking events out there and take my people to them? How do I even know they exist and which ones are worth it?
Yeah.
Those are the questions that are running through my mind right now. It's like, okay, I've got to leverage what we have to get us to a really good 2026. Yeah, but what about 2025? We've got to worry about that one too.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so there's an urgency in figuring out that development side. So,
Yeah.
well, there you go. There is just a humble ask. Hey, reach out if you have some great ideas. But
There you go. Yeah.
and I know it's multiple prongs. Like
Mm-hmm.
you can't rely on one or two things. We have to have a website. We have to have SEO.
Uh-huh.
And because we still do some residential and light commercial, it's important to have some paid ads,
Uh-huh.
right? So people can get to us quickly. But at what level? We're still trying to work all that, and we've always been working on that, and
Uh-huh.
probably always will be working on that.
For sure. And it's
So
always changing. I mean,
it's always changing. Absolutely. Yeah.
how about just talking about free markets? How has, you know, being in the US, living in a free market capitalist society, how has that benefited the business?
Well, I'll start by saying this. It's a little, might be a little colorful, but Oregon, We kindly refer sometimes to Oregon in the right context, and maybe that hopefully this is it as the communist state of Oregon, right? And that, of course, that's an overreach, but the politics here are just crazy. The money is spent so poorly, and a lot of states can say the same thing, right? Yours is one of them.
Minnesota, pretty
Yes,
bad.
pretty
I
bad.
would
Yeah.
say communist hands down here.
Yeah, right. And so, COVID hit and the
Oh,
whole coast was hit harder than anybody as far as the restraint on the constraints put on us.
yeah,
And I was like, man, I would just love to pick up and leave because I've learned enough about business now that I could probably build something in a couple of years
for
somewhere else,
sure.
you know. But but the money was so good.
Uh-huh.
It's like, okay, so we have to work within these constraints, put that in quotes, work
Right,
within these
right,
constraints,
right,
right?
right.
But the opportunity is so immense, right? And so the free market side that you're talking about, like we own businesses in very difficult places to own businesses. They're
Right.
not actually business friendly. And yet what are we doing? We're providing incomes for lots of people, and
Yes.
we're looking out at our future and saying, yeah, we can actually get somewhere by doing this.
Uh-huh.
And so geography in America, in the United States of America, is not that big of an issue
Uh-huh.
as long as you're smart about it,
Right.
probably. Now, if you're way out in the middle of nowhere where there's 400 people in a town, then yeah, you might not want to move there and try to, and start a supermarket, right? Because
Hmm.
there might already be one,
Yeah.
you
Right,
know,
right, right.
right? And one's all they need,
Yeah.
but you have to be smart about it. But I've been to I've been to Italy
Oh,
15 15 times.
oh my
Basically
word.
family. They're like family, some of the people I know there.
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah, and it's incredible. And we've visited Spain, Portugal, we've
Oh,
seen countries. I've been to Africa 4 times.
oh wow.
And that's where it really started. And I've been to Haiti, been to Mexico. And so when you start seeing it's interesting, the entrepreneurial mind when you put them in a place like that, place like those, any of those, to be
Right.
honest. And you see the opportunities that are there and you think, oh, but what if, right? What are the possibilities here? And then how could I always think about how I can build other people's lives in the process of making them, making money, a little bit of money, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The business here is taking my time away, right? So
Uh-huh.
I'm not going to go do that. I'm not going to go to Uganda and start a business,
Uh-huh.
probably, but it is interesting to talk to other business owners there and understand their constraints. And they are a lot worse and a
Right.
lot harder.
Yes.
Like your kids could, heaven forbid, your college kids, one of them could say, Dad, this college thing ain't for me,
Uh-huh.
but I want to start a company doing ABC.
Yep.
And you'd be like, whoa, wait a minute. But but your kid, your son, if he has an entrepreneurial mind, going in that, yeah, starting doing A, B, and C, you're not actually going to do that. You're going to end up doing something else.
Right.
You're
Totally.
going to find
Yep.
out that's not the thing. But we have that opportunity in America. Like I
Yes.
could probably make enough to pay my bills doing ABC when I should be doing C, D, and E, right?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Right. And I have to learn that over time. I have an opportunity here to do that, where in other countries you don't. If you invest and you start a business, you better make sure that it's right.
Yeah.
And that's why many people don't do it, because the opportunity for failure is just not there.
Right. Right.
So so in America we have the opportunity to fail and still survive.
Right. And the truth is, I mean, in some of the groups we're in together, I mean, the people at the biggest businesses have failed at least once, if not
If not
several
more.
times before
Yes.
they really did it and like failed miserably. And they'll tell you
Miserable.
flat out,
Yeah.
they're not trying to hide it. Like, you
Yeah.
just got to get back up and do it again and do it again and iterate and figure it out. And that
Yeah.
is the
And
life.
just say, well, what I say is that every every real educational milestone, it costs something.
Right.
So if I go to college and I spend 4 years and I spend 100 grand or whatever it is, there you go. That's an educational milestone that cost me
Uh-huh.
something.
Yeah.
So in business, we can compress those educational milestones, right? Down
Yes.
to sometimes a few days, sometimes a month, sometimes a week, sometimes a whole year. When we just, oh, let's start this division over here and it's going to do this thing. And then we end up having to pull the plug on it, say, well, guess what? We just paid for education.
Uh-huh. Right.
That's what we
Exactly.
paid for. That investment was in our education. That investment wasn't failure. That
Hmm.
investment was our education. And that is a much easier conceptual way to look at a loss, a financial loss, a hit you've taken.
Yeah.
It's that, yeah, I just paid for education and it actually was worth it.
Uh-huh.
Now there's a lot of stupid that goes on there to
For
put ourselves
sure.
in those positions, and it's best not to be stupid,
Right.
right? But
That's, it's best to learn from those
it's
educational
best to,
experience.
and you might want to read a book every now and then of someone that did things like that, and you might want to get advice from good, smart people instead of having so much ego that you're
Right.
just you're just going to do it anyway. So,
Yeah. Yeah. It maybe kind of goes to the question, any advice you would give to whether it's younger entrepreneurs, you mentioned like people coming out of college or people that are in just regular jobs and they're thinking about going the entrepreneurial route, any just big picture advice you'd give those kind of people?
I'm trying to remember where I heard it. I think it was in the book Profit First,
Mm. Mm.
which which to be honest doesn't work perfect for everybody,
Right.
but there's some really good principles in there. A couple of them that I'm going to start using right away. Not in redoing my entire finances in my company because I don't touch them anyway. I don't
Uh-huh.
want to, so I'm not going to
Uh-huh.
push that on them.
Yeah.
But there's a couple of principles in there, and then he talks about, and this is the one by Mike um, Molesky. That's not the name, but anyway, there's a lot of profit first, but it's just the one that says profit first.
Yeah.
I thought it was a really good book, and he basically tells you the different levels of business and what you'll kind of need on staffing.
Uh-huh.
And he said basically up to $250,000 you can be a solopreneur. You can do per year. And then there's this spot between there and 500,000 that it's like you're going to be stressed, but you can do it. But
Uh-huh.
and these numbers are right. I've seen them
Right.
actually in action. You get to that 500,000 mark, you better have thought about hiring another person to offload some of the responsibility, whether it's
Yeah.
in the sales or in the production or some of the small details, or at least someone to answer the phone, right?
Uh-huh.
you know,
Yeah.
and then he gives other levels of how to put in concept the things that are typical in the business world of how a business owner should think about when they should hire. What are the things that are going to click into place? And he spends almost a chapter on it. It's really valuable information. And I wish I'd have known, to be honest,
Uh-huh.
because I procrastinated a whole bunch of my paperwork for 2 decades and ended
Yeah.
up like I've had a lot of very uncomfortable visits and letters exchanged between me and the IRS,
Yeah.
and
That's not fun.
that's not fun. It's like
No.
it's not life ending,
Right.
like most people would think it is. I've learned some things in the process of that. They actually have rules too, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it is a pain in the butt, and they'll get what they want. They'll get what they
Mm-hmm.
get, right?
Right.
What they are entitled to. And so we do have to have things in place at the right time. You have to have a bookkeeper. You get over $250,000. By the time you get to 500,000 as a small solopreneur, you better have a bookkeeper, right?
Uh-huh.
You have to. It's one of the things
Yes.
and I say that loosely. A bookkeeper can be a lot of different things and they can do a lot of different, it's not just shuffling receipts,
Yeah.
but you have to go find somebody that can help you. And so a young entrepreneur, if you have an idea, test it just a little bit.
Uh-huh.
And I just heard short YouTube video the other day that I do agree with, is that if you can sell something before you actually produce it or provide it, that's actually the test you can do. Now, you
Yeah.
might disappoint some of those people you've sold, but
Hmm.
if you communicate on a high level, you're doing, even if you're kind of failing in the process to be able to deliver, you're doing more than, I'll tell you, at least 90% of the construction companies. I
Hmm.
don't know about your line of business, Kip, but
Uh-huh.
it's communication is terrible.
Yeah.
If you just communicate well and apologize, own your issues if you've
Right.
caused an issue, people are human, and most of the time, yeah, they're going to have one every now and then that makes you pay, emotionally, right, for what you've
Uh-huh.
done. But
Uh-huh.
most of them are actually going to live with it. They're going to be
Yeah.
okay. I understand. Too bad it
Yeah.
worked out this way. But if you communicate at a high level, that's the principle that I would say for entrepreneurs. Communicate at a high level, all directions,
Uh-huh.
and you will see success. Those learning milestones are going to be shorter and better if you communicate at a high level.
That's excellent advice.
Yeah.
Excellent. How about just building a lasting legacy? I mean, you kind of talked about that as we kicked off, and also, building the kingdom of God here on earth. How do you think about building lasting legacy through K&L and through your life?
Well, I've started to understand that to build a lasting legacy with my people is kind of pie in the sky. The way the world is, having a career at one company is a very odd and unusual thing. So for most of my people, I'm going to have a period of time,
Hmm.
and it's probably not always going to be very long.
Uh-huh.
So I need to make the impact when the impact is available to me, because they're probably someday going to move on for a lot of different reasons.
Hmm.
Uh, so be as adamant about the core values and about being who we're supposed to be and all those things. Be as good at that as possible, and communicate with them on a high level about possibility thinking and the other things that you're good at thinking about, you're good at promoting within your people. Uh, but you're going to have a short period of time with them. But when you talk about lasting legacy, I go back to family, and I say,
Mm.
well, what does this company provide for my great grandkids?
Yes.
So I currently have 18 grandkids.
Oh, what a blessing. That's
I'm
amazing.
hoping I'm hoping for tons more. I
Yeah, of course.
jokingly told my kids in front of all of them about 10 or 12 years ago. Yeah, what I want is 35. So each of you need to provide me 5 kids.
Uh-huh.
And and I think that number is ridiculous and funny. And yet it's a good chance I'll be over 20. So still, that's really something to work with, right?
For sure. Yes.
Okay, so as a grandparent now, I look at the things that are important to pass along, and it's important for my grandkids to know me because I'm healthy enough to be known. I can go to
Uh-huh.
the last night we went to a 4-year-old soccer game. It, boy, it's pretty far from World Cup, but
Uh-huh.
so funny. And so many funny things happened during that, but we showed up.
For sure.
So that builds some level of legacy uh, in them to say, yes, I knew my grandparents and they
Yeah.
showed up. They came to things. They came to the things in my life, and I want to continue to do that. That's why I stay active. That's why I work out and
Hmm.
run and do these things with my kids. One of my sons is running a 240-mile run in Moab
Oh, wow.
in 2 weeks, and my wife and I are going. We'll be part of the crew. I'll run a 17-mile stretch with him. It's
Great.
kind of in the middle of it, and it'll be at high elevation. So I'm going to do my best not to struggle. But yesterday I went out and ran stairs, at a park, and so I'm trying to stay in shape because I want to be engaged in the things that are going on. Now, 3 of my grandkids are going to be there.
Huh.
I
Yeah.
want to be available. I want to be able to say yes and not
Yeah.
have my physiology hold me back.
Right.
So that's one legacy thing in the near term, the short term. And I say short by up to even 20 years, because I could stay that healthy for 20 years if I really work on it.
Uh-huh.
But long-term legacy has to do with what are my family, what's Keith Callaway's core values? And how important is it for me to get those, to have documents, and at this point in the world, videos and things like that,
Right.
so that my fifth generation can see those.
Right.
Somebody I'll never meet. How important is that? And I think, well, I think it's pretty important because I've spent a lifetime learning about them.
Uh-huh.
Now, will they use them? I don't know, but the point is to have it documented so that they can use them, so that my kids and grandkids and their kids can use them as tools to say this is where we came from. And
Right.
they can raise their people, their families up to a higher level. So in the last couple of years, I've developed and spent time in front of my family saying, here's some core values that I think are important. I think that fit with who we are. And I've given them three, and I'd have to look to remember what they are because I'm just rolling right now. But
Yeah, right, right, right.
uh, a greatness mindset, uh, honor,
Hmm.
and I can't remember the other one at the moment, but they all have to do with, they all have scripture verses attached to them, and basically a dialogue of what they mean to me as I wrote them.
Sure.
And I've used actually a tool that someone else gave me to develop them, and I'm in the process of revising one of them because I think I missed the mark just a little bit.
Okay.
Okay. And I said I chose three because I want the families to take these on, because I think overall this is who we are.
Yeah.
And then each of you add one or two to it for your family.
Very good.
And then hopefully there will be, by the time I pass, that those three will be revised well enough so that those carry, and that every family in the generations to come that is willing to do a tiny bit of work will put those core values into their family and say, this is who we are. This
Yeah.
is this is what this is what started back then, but has become who we are. And then
Oh.
you talk about the finances and things like that that can go with that. If I'm intentional about passing legacy, then I need to attach importance to the dollars
Mm-hmm.
that go to the next generation, and then create opportunities for grandkids I may never know,
Yeah.
and opportunity with constraint.
Uh-huh.
Oh, if you want to go to college, okay, but you have to be able, but your parents need to be able to say, okay, you've lived in such a way that makes you trustworthy of those dollars,
Yeah.
right? Based on the core values. Go back to that core value talk when we talked about the company. Based
Yeah.
on the core values, are you pushing into these things? Are you a family member that we can say makes our name proud,
Yes.
right? If you are, then yes, you get that. And I've learned most of this from other people.
Uh-huh.
I've thought this all along. How do I pass a great legacy? But I have a coach I work with at least once a month, and he's providing me resources all the time through his organization. And he's a pastor, so it
Okay.
comes from a certain viewpoint, which is a view
Yes.
I want it to come from.
Right.
And and then I read the book. Um, it's called Business Not by the Book,
Okay.
by the owner of Hobby Lobby, which is
Oh, yeah.
David Green.
Yeah.
So when you talk about legacy and legacy thinking,
Mm.
it is the best place to start, in my opinion, because it goes with a story about what happened and how they did things. There's one chapter where he says, I sit down once a year with my family and talk about 150 years from now.
Huh.
And I went, oh my gosh, that's 8, 9 generations. Now he's got billions of dollars, right,
Uh-huh.
to pass that direction.
Yeah.
But he also understands that what is it, 3% of businesses, generational businesses, make it to the fourth generation?
Right. Right.
About 3%. And I don't care about the business of K&L making it to the fourth generation. I want the business of the family to
Mm.
make it to the eighth generation.
Yes.
family, the family
Yes.
culture, the family mindset, the things that are important, that are really important for for this family and this world, which is passing along the truth about God and about who we what why we were even put on this earth.
Uh-huh.
Because who has the answer to that question?
Right.
Well, I want to provide those kinds of things, those kind of tools to answer that question to my family as I go forward.
Uh-huh.
So there's a long, a little bit complicated answer to the legacy question. You just opened up a box that I love talking about, love thinking about, and just love doing things about because it matters so much.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's a perfect way to end the show today. That was incredible. I am gonna borrow some of that in my
Well,
own family. And
go read that book.
yeah, yes.
Business Not by the Book, and you can buy them at a Hobby Lobby.
Okay. We got one super close here.
I bought 5 of them and sent 4 of them to someone else, other people.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
perfect. Well,
So it
thank you.
really a good family, a good guy, and there's a lot of practical stuff in there that you could implement right away.
No, that's incredible.
So
Awesome. Well, good. Well, thank you. And we'll put this all in the show notes, but how can people find you, find K&L, anything you want to share? And again, we'll put it in the notes, but how do people
well,
reach out to you or to
yeah,
K&L?
check out our website, our Instagram, K&L Industries. It's spelled out K&L Industries. I believe that's how it is on Instagram. Uh, Thousands of videos and stuff you can see. Yeah, like Instagram's crazy how it keeps things and makes it visible.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, check out K&L. Look at our website. Yeah, that's great. At K K&L, the company, the insignia is actually hard
Uh-huh.
to find. You keep searching, it'll come up. You
Yeah.
search a couple of different ways to find us, it'll come up. Thankfully, finally, right after all these years of trying. Uh,
Right.
my uh, my stuff is under Keith L. Callaway, and that's Instagram, Facebook, um, LinkedIn,
Uh-huh.
YouTube. I also have a podcast I do weekly called Greatness from Small Beginnings.
Hmm.
And I do talk a lot on there by myself, but I also interview people that have a story of some kind. And you
Sure.
know what? What I've found is that almost everybody does.
Right.
They have a little thing in their life that where they've gotten to some level of greatness, something
Yes.
they're proud of. And I got a couple more interviews I'm coming up that I'm pretty excited about. So
Awesome.
yeah,
No. Well,
so
very
that's where
good.
you
Yeah.
can find me, Keith L. Callaway.
Perfect. Yeah. And again, we'll have it all in the notes so people listening, you can check it out. But Keith, thank you so much for sharing your story and family, business, and legacy. We really appreciate it. This was absolutely fantastic. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, it's a real privilege. Thank you.
Oh, you bet.
Mhm.